I stood at the window of my condo, the skyline of Calgary glowing against the early evening sky, and tried to pretend everything was fine. My name is Edgar Lonsdale. I'm 44 years old. I work as a logistics consultant for aerospace firms, mostly hopping between Vancouver and Calgary, managing cargo chains most people don't even think about. Everything I do is about order, precision, and avoiding chaos. But back home wasn't so orderly anymore. Mia met me at the door that evening with a practiced smile and a warm hug, her voice smooth and upbeat. "You're back." I was just about to start dinner. She kissed my cheek, the kind of kiss that used to mean something. Now it just felt like good manners. "Vancouver was fine," I said, dropping my suitcase by the wall. "Flight was late." She was already moving back toward the kitchen, swaying just enough to look natural, dressed in some soft athleisure set that probably cost more than my work jacket. Mia always looked good. Still did. She knew exactly how to carry herself, effortlessly elegant, Instagram-ready at all times. The place was spotless. Too spotless. Like someone had gone over every counter and cushion 5 minutes before I arrived. "Where are the kids?" I asked, loosening my tie. "Ava's in her room drawing. Julian's on his laptop, probably gaming or doing that school project." "Right? The project." Julian had mentioned something about an audio documentary for class. History or media or something. I hadn't paid enough attention. That kid saw everything, though, just like I used to. I made my way down the hall and peeked into Julian's room. He looked up from his desk, adjusting his glasses. "Hey, Dad. You're back early." "Early enough," I said. "How's school?" "Fine. Boring." That was about as much conversation as I'd get unless I asked the right question. He was 13 now, old enough to start pulling away, smart enough to notice more than he let on. I gave him a nod and kept walking. I didn't know exactly when I had stopped being central to the house. I was more like a fixture now. A guest with a suitcase. Mia and I met in high school back in Lethbridge. She was a dancer then, limber, bright, full of laughter. We moved to Calgary together, had Julian, then Ava, and somewhere in between ballet studios and business trips, she became someone else. These days, she posted smoothies and mindfulness tips and called herself a wellness architect. Her latest venture was some digital brand she was building, lots of soft lighting and motivational quotes. But what bothered me wasn't the career shift. It was the distance. Dinner was roasted chicken and quinoa plated like we were on a cooking show. Ava talked about her art club. Julian kept quiet. Mia laughed at all the right moments, touched my arm like we were still a team, and avoided eye contact when I asked about the LLC we both supposedly managed. Later that night, I stepped onto the balcony with a scotch. The wind was sharp even in May. I called Darren. "You back in town?" he asked. "Yeah. Been a few weeks." He didn't say anything for a second. "Then you were right to ask me to look into things." My stomach tightened. "What did you find?" "Couple of things. First, the shared account. She's been moving money. Quietly. Small amounts into a side account under her name. LLC registered 3 months ago. Not our company." "Jesus," I whispered. "And there's this guy Lionel Farnsworth. Tech guy. Big smile. Lives in Yaletown, but he's been flying here. Multiple times. I got surveillance of him entering your building while you were in Vancouver." I closed my eyes. "You think she's having an affair?" "I think she's preparing to leave. The guy's not just some investor. He's walking like he owns the place." The scotch burned going down. Back inside, I found Mia on the couch scrolling through something. She looked up and smiled. That same smile I'd known since we were 17. The same one she gave her audience on camera. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking about work." She nodded like she believed me. Or like she wanted me to believe that she did. In the morning, I found Julian in the kitchen eating cereal. Ava was still asleep. Mia had already left for a Pilates thing, according to the note on the fridge. "Dad?" Julian said. "Yeah? You ever think people pretend to be okay just so no one asks questions?" I stared at him for a second. "Yeah. I think that happens a lot." He gave me a slow nod and went back to eating. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. I didn't know it yet, but my son was already collecting clues. Already recording the story of a house that was cracking beneath the surface. And me, I was just beginning to realize how long I'd been living in a place that was no longer mine. Outside, the city hummed. My phone buzzed again. Another update from Darren. Lionel's car. Lionel's flight schedule. Lionel's name on a condo in Kelowna. I stood at the window again, looking down at the street, and told myself this wasn't a crisis. Not yet. But I knew better. The illusion was breaking. And the silence in the house wasn't peace. It was the sound of something coming undone. Julian came into my office one night after Mia had gone to bed. It was close to 11. He didn't knock, just opened the door like he was carrying something too heavy to hold alone. "I need to show you something," he said. I closed my laptop. "Everything okay?" He nodded once but didn't sit. "It's for my school project. The audio thing. I started recording around the house. Just normal stuff, you know. I wasn't sure where this was going." "Okay." Then he pulled a flash drive from his hoodie pocket and handed it to me. "It's all on here. I didn't edit anything." "Julian, what exactly did you record?" He hesitated. "Just conversations. Mom and that guy Lionel. Sometimes in the living room. Once in the car when she thought I was asleep." I stared at the flash drive in my hand, feeling the weight of it settle like a stone. "You've been recording them?" "I didn't mean to spy," he said quickly. "It started as a school thing. But then I heard them talking about Kelowna. About leaving. About you." I swallowed. "Did your sister hear anything?" "No. I kept her out of it. That kid. Too perceptive for his own good." I ruffled his hair and nodded. "Thanks for telling me." After he went back to bed, I opened the files. There were hours of audio. I skipped around, landing on a clip labeled Thursday, 4 p.m., balcony. Mia's voice, "We just need to time it right. If Edgar's out for another contract in July, that gives us a clean window." Then Lionel, smooth as ever, "I know a lawyer in Kelowna. He's good. Quiet. Handles family restructures all the time." Family restructures. Jesus. Another clip, "I don't want the kids to hate me," Mia said. "I just want a life that feels like mine again." Lionel, "We'll ease them in. That's what the retreat center is for." Retreat center? I listened to 5 or 6 clips like that. Most were casual. Chit-chat, laughter. But every few minutes, something dark would peek through: plans, whispers, assets. By morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I forwarded the audio to Darren. He responded 2 hours later with a folder of drone footage showing Lionel entering our building 6 times in the past month. Each time within 2 days of one of Mia's wellness offsites. He also included screenshots of bank activity. Mia had opened a new LLC under her maiden name. She'd already transferred just under $12,000 from our joint savings. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee that had gone cold, watching Ava flip through her sketchbook. Julian came in and didn't say a word. Just looked at me, eyes asking what I was going to do. I didn't answer. Not out loud. Instead, I called a woman named Nora Kavanaugh. Darren had recommended her. She wasn't just a divorce lawyer, she was a strategist. Quiet. Surgical. We met that afternoon in a corner office downtown. She didn't smile when I walked in. Didn't offer water or small talk. She just opened a legal pad and said, "Tell me everything." By the end of the meeting, we had a plan: asset shielding, a temporary trust in the kids' names, and a financial audit of both our shared and personal accounts. "This has to stay covert," I told her. "For now." She nodded. "You're not reacting. You're preparing." That night, Mia sat across from me at the dinner table, smiling like everything was fine. Julian passed me a note under the table. A single sentence written in blocky, careful letters. He said she should move before summer break. I didn't flinch. I just nodded once and tucked it into my pocket. The game had changed. And I wasn't playing defense anymore. I came home on a Wednesday. No warning. No preamble. No, hey, my flight got moved up. I just walked into my own condo at 3:18 p.m. with my laptop bag over my shoulder and my heart pounding in my chest. I could smell ginger and citrus before I even got through the front door. Someone was juicing. Inside, the blender was going. And there he was, Lionel Farnsworth, standing barefoot in my kitchen, squeezing kale into a metal press like he owned the damn place. He turned as I set my keys down, not even startled. "Oh, hey," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't know you were back." I walked right past him to the fridge, opened it, and took out a bottle of sparkling water. Neither did I. Mia appeared a second later, hair pulled into a perfect ponytail, leggings crisp like she had just stepped off a fitness shoot. "Edgar, I thought your trip was through Friday." "Things wrapped early," I said. I took a slow sip and watched Lionel wipe his hands on our kitchen towel. Mia stepped closer, voice breezy. "We were just talking branding strategy. For the app." He had a few ideas. I nodded. "Of course. What's it called again?" "Wellness Glow." Lionel laughed like we were old pals. "That's just a placeholder. We're still ideating." "Ah, right? Ideating." Julian stood in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Watching. I gave him a nod. He didn't say anything. Just slid his phone into his pocket and walked back to his room. I knew that meant he'd recorded the whole exchange. Good. Mia started fiddling with her phone. I could see the nerves behind her eyes now. The careful act was slipping. "I'll get out of your way," Lionel said. "Let you guys catch up." "You do that," I replied without looking at him. He grabbed his leather messenger bag and left, but not before giving Mia's shoulder a quick squeeze. I caught that. So did Julian, who hadn't gone far. Once the door shut, Mia spun around. "What was that?" "What was what?" "That energy. You're acting like he barged in here uninvited." "Did he?" I asked flatly. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I sat on the couch and unzipped my bag. "I'll be working from here this week." She stared at me. "Is everything okay?" "Peachy." That night, I sent Nora the last of the documents. She replied immediately. "Asset freeze initiated. Trust filed. You now own nothing she can touch." Perfect. Meanwhile, I forwarded her Julian's latest audio clip. This one had Lionel talking strategy in the living room. "We'll file in Kelowna. Jurisdiction will favor her. Once she gets primary custody, the rest's a formality." Formality. I watched Ava color at the table while Julian helped her sort markers. All that innocence. All that trust. And this is what they were planning. Later, when Mia went to bed, I stayed up and went through her browser history. She'd searched parental abandonment laws Alberta and how to claim full custody with frequent travel. I wasn't surprised. But I was done playing slow. The next morning, Mia was on the phone, probably her new lawyer. She smiled a little too wide when she saw me. Julian slid another USB stick into my jacket pocket on the way out to school. "More proof," he whispered. "Thanks," I murmured back. "But no more after this." He just nodded, eyes dark. By noon, Nora had everything she needed. The trust was in place. I'd started temporary divestments to make myself look financially unstable on paper. Mia might have thought she had the upper hand, but she had no idea the ground had already shifted beneath her feet. Julian took to surveillance like it was instinct. He stopped using his phone directly and switched to a cheap lapel mic connected to an old MP3 recorder I gave him. We used cloud storage, encrypted folders, and dummy file names. It was all quiet. Clinical. A strange kind of father-son bonding neither of us asked for. I tried to make it a one-time thing. Then, too. But Mia kept talking. At cafes, set retreats, on speakerphone with Lionel while folding towels, she never stopped. And Julian, sharp as ever, caught it all. One file caught my eye. It was a clip from a juice bar downtown. "Mia, the kids are attached to Edgar, sure. But once they're in a new space with fresh routines, they'll adapt. Lionel, that's the beauty of Kelowna. Nature, wellness, good schools. It'll feel like an upgrade. Mia, Ava needs more stability than he can give her." She said that with the same voice she used to read bedtime stories. I forwarded the clip to Nora. She called 5 minutes later. "Edgar, it's time. You're about to see how far this really goes." While Julian kept listening, I moved money. Quietly. Precisely. I transferred my brokerage account into a newly formed family trust with Ava and Julian as sole beneficiaries. The condo, technically mine before the marriage, was refinanced into a corporate holding I controlled. Darren had someone on the inside at the title office expedite the paperwork. By the end of the week, on paper, I was worth just under $7,000. Let Mia and Lionel try to sue that. Darren dug deeper into Lionel's past. Turns out our polished investor had a pattern: 3 women in 5 years, each with a startup, each wrapped in confidentiality agreements and NDAs. 2 LLCs dissolved under questionable terms. One wellness retreat in California turned out to be a front for funneling funds from private investors who never saw a dime back. More importantly, Darren found a burner Gmail account connected to Lionel. The contents were a goldmine. One email from him to a contact named TrustProxy73 read: "Same playbook. She's on board. I'll get access to her financials once Edgar is out of the picture." I forwarded that to Nora too. She didn't respond with words, just a smiley face. Coldest damn emoji I'd ever seen. Meanwhile, Mia started working Ava. Subtle at first. "I know Daddy's busy, sweetie. But Mommy's here. Mommy's always here." Or, "Daddy works so hard, sometimes he forgets what's best." Julian didn't miss any of it. One night, he came into my office again, slower this time. He handed me a drawing Ava had made. One of those happy family sketches kids do in kindergarten. But this one had only 3 figures. Mia, Julian, and Ava. "Know me. She said you were moving soon," Julian muttered. My stomach twisted. I looked at him, really looked, and saw it. The weight on his shoulders. The way he carried his backpack like it was armor. This kid was tracking our family's implosion like a private investigator. and he was barely 13. "You shouldn't have to do this," I said. He shrugged. "Someone has to." That haunted me. I called Darren that night. "Pull back the kid," I said. "No more drops from Julian. We've got enough." "Understood," Darren replied. "You sure?" "No. But I'm not losing him just to win this." He was quiet for a beat. "Lionel's booked another flight. Friday. To Calgary?" "No," Darren said. "To Panama." I sat back in my chair. "He's running. Looks that way." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Everything I was building, the firewall, the trust, the digital breadcrumbs, was working. The trap was nearly closed. But I couldn't shake the image of Julian, alone in his room, uploading files to Dropbox like a war reporter. This wasn't just a legal strategy anymore. It was a minefield, and I had dragged my son right into it. That night, I lay in bed beside Mia. She scrolled Instagram while I stared at the ceiling. Ava slept down the hall. Julian's recorder was silent, and all I could think was, how many pieces of yourself do you lose in the name of protection? Because I was winning, but I was also bleeding. On a Monday morning that looked like any other. Gray skies, traffic humming, birds pretending the world was normal. Mia filed for divorce. The email came through at 9:11 a.m. from a firm I'd never heard of. Boutique, aggressive, and branded like a lifestyle brand instead of a law office. Their tagline? Empowerment through exit. In the petition, Mia accused me of abandonment, emotional manipulation, and controlling behavior. She claimed I'd intentionally destabilized the household through excessive work travel. Said I showed an alarming pattern of detachment from the children. Her lawyer attached Julian's school reports, my flight history, and cherry-picked screenshots from texts, one of which was me reminding her to log Ava's dentist visit. She also wanted sole custody, full spousal support, a portion of my pension. I forwarded the entire package to Nora. She replied in under 10 minutes. "Nora, don't worry. We've been expecting this. Let's begin." By noon, our countersuit was filed. We hit back with everything. Evidence of parental alienation, covert financial movements, and Mia's ongoing relationship with Lionel. All backed by Julian's recordings, timestamps, and Darren's surveillance. Nora structured it perfectly. Not just reactive, but a surgical offensive. No fire, no rage, just precision. Meanwhile, Darren had finished his background investigation on Lionel. It wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Turns out, Lionel Farnsworth was an alias. Real name, Leonard Farson. 5 previous legal name changes. 2 lawsuits pending in California, 1 in Nevada. Linked to a Ponzi scheme through a shell app that promised wellness investing through cryptocurrency. He was under quiet investigation by federal regulators for art fraud of all things, something to do with fake NFTs and AI-generated sculptures. Darren didn't just tell me this, he packaged it. And then he leaked it. That evening, during the 6 o'clock news, a local investigative report aired a story titled, "Tech Investor or Financial Predator? The Hidden Life of Lionel Farnsworth." There he was in high definition, sipping green juice, stepping out of a rideshare, speaking on panels about emotional capital. Then came the grainy court documents, the mugshot from 2013, and screenshots of victims calling him a con man. Julian sat beside me on the couch, wide-eyed. "Is that the same guy who said Kelowna had sacred energy?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "That's him." At 6:41 p.m., Mia got a call. Her face changed as soon as she picked up. I watched her stand in the hallway, one hand gripping the doorframe, the color draining from her face. She didn't speak much, just whispered, "What do you mean? And you can't just leave. And finally, you said this was temporary." I didn't need to hear the other side of the call. I knew exactly what Lionel Leonard was saying. Something like, "I'm flying to Costa Rica. Take what you can. Run." She hung up, walked slowly into the kitchen, and opened the fridge like muscle memory was all she had left. For the first time in months, Mia looked lost. The chessboard had flipped. She wasn't the player anymore. She was the piece being removed. 3 days after Lionel's disappearance, Mia filed for an emergency custody order. The filing came in hard, stacked with accusations that felt scripted and desperate. She claimed I was emotionally erratic, that my sudden return home had destabilized the children, and most disturbing, that I had coached Julian into spying. Her attorney argued that Julian's surveillance was a sign of psychological manipulation and that Ava had expressed fear during episodes of parental tension. They requested immediate custody and a no-contact provision for me pending psychological evaluation. It was a bold move, but Nora was ready. She submitted our full response that same afternoon, complete with timestamps, transcripts, and a signed statement from Darren verifying the origin of all evidence. We also filed a formal affidavit from Julian. It was the first time we had to involve him directly. In court, I sat beside Nora in a charcoal suit that hadn't fit this well in years. Mia sat on the opposite side, dressed in soft blue like she was auditioning for a Hallmark drama. Her eyes darted between me and the judge, and her lawyer whispered to her constantly, like a coach giving a nervous athlete last-minute tips. Julian was called to testify. I wanted to stand to object, to say he shouldn't have to, but Nora touched my wrist and shook her head gently. He walked to the stand in a pressed button-down shirt and clean sneakers. He looked like a kid trying to be a grown-up and doing a pretty damn good job of it. Julian, the judge said, can you tell us, in your own words, what's been going on at home? He took a breath. My mom has been seeing another man named Lionel. They talk about moving me and my sister without telling my dad. I heard them talk about Kelowna, about custody. I started recording stuff because I didn't know what else to do. Did your father ask you to do this? No, Julian said firmly. He didn't know at first. I told him when I got scared. The courtroom was silent. Mia leaned forward like she might speak, but her lawyer stopped her. The judge nodded. Thank you, Julian. Then came Ava. She didn't take the stand, but the judge allowed a brief in-chambers conversation accompanied by a court-appointed child specialist. When they returned, the specialist submitted a summary. In it, Ava said, Mom told me to say that Dad yells and doesn't care. But he doesn't. He just works a lot. And he always hugs me before school. That line felt like a punch to the heart. Then Nora dropped the final blow, a video message Mia had sent me just 3 weeks earlier. A private gloat recorded after one of her late-night phone calls with Lionel. In it, she laughed into the camera and said, You can be the boss at work, Edgar. But in this house, I make the rules. The kids? They're already on my side. You're just a paycheck with a suitcase. When the clip ended, the courtroom was dead silent. The judge cleared his throat, removed his glasses, and stared at us like we were characters in a play he was tired of watching. This is a case of strategic manipulation, not parental concern, he said. The use of the children, especially Julian, as pawns is deeply troubling. But the evidence is clear. He turned to Mia. Full temporary custody is transferred to the father, Mr. Lonsdale. Mother is granted supervised visitation until a full hearing can be scheduled. Mia's face didn't crumble, it cracked. Like a mask splintering. She tried to speak, but her voice caught. Her lawyer whispered something about appealing. She didn't hear it. I stood, legs unsteady, and looked at Julian. He didn't smile. He just gave me a tiny nod, like a soldier confirming the mission was complete. Outside the courtroom, reporters were already gathering. Darren stood by the door like a shadow, nodding once as I passed. This wasn't over, but it was our first real win. And for the first time, the silence in our home wouldn't be fear. It would be peace. Mia's fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, quiet, like a balloon losing air in the dark. After the custody ruling, she stopped posting for nearly a month. No sunlit smoothies. No faux-meditative captions about growth or alignment. Her wellness glow brand flickered out like a bad candle. Sponsorships vanished one by one. A few former clients quietly unfollowed. The others just stopped returning her calls. Even her own parents pulled back. They'd been her biggest champions once, reposting her Instagram lives and quoting her tips about energetic self-mastery. But after the court transcripts hit the local news blogs and after Lionel's face showed up on every financial crime thread west of Toronto, they went silent. Edgar the villain was no longer the narrative they could spin. Back home, the air felt different. Not lighter. Just still. Ava began sleeping through the night again. Julian stopped locking his door. He never said so, but I noticed the change, how he left his laptop open, how he started eating breakfast at the table instead of in his room. Small things. Things that told me he no longer felt like he had to monitor the world around him just to survive it. I hired a part-time housekeeper and a retired teacher named Mrs. Falk to help with after-school tutoring. Darren stayed in the background, watching for legal backdoors, rogue contact attempts, or digital reach-outs from Lionel just in case. We heard from him only once. It was a text short and cold, sent from an encrypted app. Lionel, need documents. Still in her name. Can't leave without them. Help and I'll vanish. I didn't reply, but Mia did. She blocked him. I don't know what he expected from her. Mercy? Loyalty? An exit plan? Whatever bond they shared had snapped when his promises dissolved in a puff of news headlines and court orders. A week later, her attorney reached out with a new offer. Mia would relinquish all custody claims, permanent, full legal rights to me, in exchange for a sealed settlement, no criminal pursuit, and monthly support just enough to keep her afloat. Nora's office buzzed when the email came in. She asked if I wanted to fight it, sue for damages, pursue restitution, maybe even go after the wellness app's income. But I just sat back in the chair and looked out her window at the snow-dusted city. I don't want the kids dragged through another 6 months of war, I said. Let her go. Nora nodded. I'll draw it up. The settlement was signed 3 days later. Supervised visits resumed at a child advocacy center across town. No cameras, no gifts, just soft couches and a social worker taking notes. At first, Mia came in stiff and bitter, like it was all beneath her. But over time, something shifted. Her voice softened. She asked real questions about the kids instead of pretending. She stopped using words like energy and vibration, and just said, I miss you. It didn't fix anything, but it was a start. And sometimes survival looks like mercy, not because they deserve it, but because your children do. 6 months later, the condo was quiet in a good way. Julian had started sleeping with his door open again. Ava had a bulletin board now, pinned with drawings and school photos. There were no more whispered phone calls, no hidden recorders, no drone footage being uploaded to secret folders. Just homework, snacks, and the occasional squabble about who got the last of the apple juice. We weren't healed, but we were whole. One Saturday morning, Julian and I sat in the counselor's office. It had taken weeks of persuading to get him there, but once we did, he showed up every week like it was part of his routine. Dr. Sutherland was a calm man in his 60s, with reading glasses that kept sliding down his nose and a notebook he rarely wrote in. That day, he asked Julian what he thought his role had been during everything that happened. Julian shrugged at first. Then he said, I guess I was the protector. Dr. Sutherland tilted his head. For your sister? Julian nodded. And for my dad. Sort of. And who protected you? Julian didn't answer right away. He looked at me, couldn't hold his gaze. When the session ended, we sat in the parking lot for a while. Julian buckled his seatbelt but didn't ask to go home. You were just a kid, I finally said. You still are. He stared out the window. Felt like someone had to pay attention. You shouldn't have had to. I know. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. He didn't pull away. That evening, I met Mia at a cafe downtown. One of those neutral places with brick walls and indie music playing just loud enough to make real conversations feel like confessions. She was already there when I arrived, stirring her tea, her phone face down for once. I didn't expect you to say yes, she said. I almost didn't, I replied. I handed her a plain folder across the table. No envelope, no legal stamps, just documents, financial trails, offshore records, quiet screenshots of Lionel's other aliases she never saw. I never used these, I said. Could've, but I didn't. She opened it slowly. Read a page, then another. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. He really was never who I thought, she murmured. I nodded. I figured you should know how deep it went. For your sake. She looked up, eyes tired. Why are you giving me this now? Because I don't want to hurt you anymore. I just want to be done. Peacefully. For the kids. Mia leaned back, like she hadn't expected that answer. She looked thinner, smaller somehow, like life had been slowly carving her down to something quieter. You don't hate me? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I did, I said. For a long time. Then I got tired of carrying it. She looked down. I was so sure I was right. About everything. You weren't. I know. She slid the folder back toward me. Keep it, I said. I don't want it. We didn't hug. We didn't say goodbye. We just sat there for another minute, letting the silence sit between us like something earned. Later that night, back at the condo, Julian asked where I'd been. Just tying off some loose ends, I said. He nodded and went back to building a model plane on his desk. I watched him for a minute, his hands steady, precise. And I realized for the first time we were no longer living in a house where everything was breaking. We were building again. Quietly. Carefully. Together. Spring came late that year. Snow still clung to the edges of sidewalks in Calgary even though the sun had started showing up with a little more confidence. Our windows stayed open now. Not for surveillance. Just for the air. I stood in the kitchen one Friday morning nursing a cup of coffee that had already gone cold when an email notification popped up on my phone. Subject: Urgent Logistics Proposal, Seattle Contract, 6 months. It was from one of my longtime clients, an offer I would have jumped at 6 months ago. High budget. International exposure. The kind of job that came with platinum travel points and a bonus big enough to cover a new condo. I stared at it for a while. Then I hit delete. Julian came out of his room rubbing sleep from his eyes, still in that liminal space between boy and teenager. He went straight to the model plane on his desk, the same one he'd started during the worst days of our unraveling. He hadn't touched it in weeks. I walked over and sat down beside him. You ever gonna finish that thing? I asked. He shrugged. Maybe. I handed him a piece, one of the wings, and picked up a brush. You don't have to, I added. But if you want help, I've got a free afternoon. Julian looked at me, suspicious at first. Then, cautiously, he pushed over a bottle of glue. We worked in silence. Comfortable this time. The door buzzed around lunchtime. Ava skipped to the intercom. It's Mom, she called out. I tensed for a second. But Julian didn't flinch. He glanced at his phone and tapped out a quick message. I caught a glimpse of the screen. Julian, Mom's taking us to the museum. Okay? I stared at the words for a second longer than I needed to. Then typed back. Me, yes. Have fun. Ava threw on her jacket and zipped it up wrong. Julian fixed it without being asked. Before they left, he gave me a short nod, barely a glance, but it carried weight. Not permission. Not resentment. Just understanding. When the door closed behind them, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I sat back on the couch, the model plane half finished on the table, and let the sunlight settle across the floor. No more late-night strategy calls. No more plans to outmaneuver someone I once loved. No more turning my son into a shadow agent just to survive. Just quiet. I looked out over the city skyline, those same towers that once felt like walls around me, and breathed deep. I hadn't won anything. But I hadn't lost myself either. That finally felt like enough.